Hi, Lisa Marie of Global One Health. This is video 2 in my Turkish Get-Up series. As I mentioned, I'm going to break the Get-Up down into a few videos as there's a lot to address, as the Get-Up is a rather complex exercise. I wanted to be able to give very specific details and components to how to properly execute the Get-Up, so it's a lot of information and just too much to put into one very, very long video. So hence I'm breaking it up. So if you haven't seen the first part, I'm not going to review every component in all of the videos because it is a lot of information. So I'm going to begin where I left off. So in terms of the setup, I really talk very, very specifically about the importance of the setup and what you want to be thinking about. So please do check out the first video so that you know how to set yourself up correctly, because that is one of the most important aspects, in my opinion, is properly positioning yourself in the starting position on the Get-Up on the ground, and then it's going to set you up for much more success. So again, I'm going to start from where I left off, where we are on the elbow. As I mentioned in all these videos, right now it's a naked Get-Up, as they say, referred to in Strong First, which is a Get-Up without holding a bell or dumbbell or kettlebell in your hand. So now we're at the point where we're on the elbow, and now we're going to talk about how to get, on the hand, and we're going to talk about the sweep through. So the traditional way of doing, or the initial way I learned from RKC, is doing a high bridge. They take that out and just talk about doing a sweep through. So I'm going to do the more traditional one that they're doing today through Strong First. So from this position, my hand is externally rotated and I'm driving my hand into the ground. So as I continue to work on coming up from the ground in the actual Get-Up, I want to never forget the importance of pushing down into the ground to give me that stimulus and energy to push against the ground to help me get up. So we're focusing much more on the movement, so I'm not really focusing on where this arm is right now. I will talk about that later on in the future. So this foot of the bent leg is pushing into the ground. I'm trying to push down into the ground with that heel and reach out through that leg. As I do the sweep through, I'm going to show in slow motion. It's my intention of driving this foot into the ground that's going to push down, and my hand. So it's my opposite hand and foot pushing into the ground that enables my pelvis to come up just enough where I can sweep through this leg into this position. So as I mentioned in the first video, I think a great way to learn the transitions of the Turkish Get-Up is not to go from the ground up to standing all the way back down in one constant motion unless you already know the pattern. But even if you want to, if you're learning for the first time, or if you know the Get-Up but you feel like your technique and your form are not really clean, you want to make sure that you own each position or segment of the Get-Up and can pause in that position. When you're getting tested out for the certification, they want to see that you're hitting each point and not just kind of bleeding from one movement to the next. Hitting and registering cleanly and pausing for a moment, I think, is the best way to practice the Get-Up, so that when you are going under heavier load, your body and your brain, your neurological system and your muscular system know exactly working together of where you want to be in space in those transitions. So you're on the hand. Again, I'm going to push that hand and the opposite foot into the ground. Of course, my core stays working throughout, is a given. My lats are engaged. I'm packing my shoulders down. So I'm going to push into the ground just up enough where my hips come off the ground to give me the space that I need to pass or sweep through this bottom leg till it gets behind me, and that is the sweep through. So now again, I have a nice loading of my shoulder vertically stacked over my wrist. Now there's a slight give and take that's okay, but you don't want to have it excessively positioned where the hand is far away from the line of the shoulder. And I'm just going to undo that to do the reverse sweep through. So as I'm showing you to get into the new position and come out of it, it's also introducing how you're going to be moving when you're doing the reverse Get-Up, coming from the standing position back down to the ground. So again, I drive into the ground. Let me show you from a slightly different angle. So the sweep through, I raise at my hips, I bend this knee, and I'm going to sweep my lower leg underneath my pelvis and body till it's behind me. Notice I'm in dorsiflexion. I very often will see people sweep through and they're here, right? So the reason why you don't want to do that is because that's not going to be the foot and ankle position that you want to be in in the transition from the lunge to standing, because you're not going to stand up in the lunge in that position on your foot. So the sweep through is where you want to think, right? It's pointed just so you can pass underneath, but by the time I get to that hip hinge position, which is also a kneeling windmill, I'm in dorsiflexion of that down foot. Okay, and then, right, so it's just enough space where I can pass through. From this kneeling windmill position, I have two ways I can approach coming to the kneeling lunge. Now, the way that I traditionally do, and they also talk about going deeper, right? You can do a deeper slight hip hinge. So you'll see people go deeper into the position and then come up. So that is a little movement that they've added in there to deepen in the hip hinge because you're working that angle of the pelvis. So one approach is I shift back and then I come up on that leg, right? So from there, I would come up and either bring my moving leg and transition it forward, or I can come up and I can pivot on the knee. Either way is going to get me into that more parallel position. Right now, make note, I am in external rotation of both hips, right? My thighs are opening outward from my pelvis. When I go into the kneeling lunge, I'm going to be, and I'll show you just from this angle, I have to be in a parallel lunge position. So there has to be a transition of external rotation in both hips to a more parallel neutral position in both hips. So you have to hit that point, but you don't want to get here initially from the sweep through. And I will see clients do that, where when they're on the hand, if their legs are too narrow, they come into the sweep through and they're like this, and it's a very awkward position. So you need to be externally rotated going from here, because you're starting in external rotation. That's why I talked in that first video about understanding the position of the legs in the setup is important. You're in an externally rotated position. Now, I traditionally will turn on this down knee and just pivot. So now I'm internally rotating my standing or leg that's grounded down to the ground from here. Some people find that uncomfortable. If you have a knee issue or you don't feel comfortable rotating on the knee itself to get into that parallel position, the other transition is that you come up through the hips, you leave that leg stationary, and you rotate the entire body and that moving leg. So I'll show you in slow motion. I'm going to rotate my entire body, and I move the whole leg and foot to now where I'm in that parallel lunge position. So if I was in this angle, so you can see from different views, here would be so I've just finished right, I'm here on the hand, I raise up my hips. This is a good angle to see the hip. I do the sweep through. I'm back here. Now I can either pivot on that knee, or I would just rotate my entire body. That either is acceptable, that is up to you if you have a preference on how you want to do your transition. So from here, and we're just about finished with the actual get up, from here I'm going to come into this position. I'm going to get cut off a little bit, but there I would actually stand up and I'm in two legs. It would be in a parallel position. So from this perspective, I'm now parallel. I stand up out of that kneeling lunge on two legs. So that is the next component of the get up, from the hand to the sweep through. So I'll just show you from a posterior view. So if I'm in my hand position and I'm here, right, so you can see I'm externally rotated, I'm packed, right? I talked a lot about the importance. You're not supposed to unpack that shoulder at any point in time in the get up, because remember, it's the downside that is your connection to the ground, but that's providing a tremendous amount of support for that shoulder that's holding the kettlebell over your head. So that's really important. So if I've just gotten to the hand, I raise up my hips. You can see from just another angle, slow motion, I do my sweep through. Now notice I'm in dorsiflexion of that back foot. And now I can either pivot on that knee, so I'm going to do that now. Now, when I talk about I'll talk about that hip hinge. So once you've done the sweep through, there's a moment where you can just kind of get a deeper hinge in the hip fold, and that kind of creates a nice little stimulus to kind of get up out and come into that kneeling lunge position. So from the windmill position, after you've done the sweep through, again, you can come up Now you want to use your glutes and hamstrings to get up. So very important is that I'm pushing the ball of that foot down, and of course the sole of the other foot into the ground, engaging through here, and either pivoting on that leg, and now I'm in that parallel position, or of course, it's going to just change which direction I'm facing in my get-up. So if I do that, notice now I'm facing, flat back view to the screen, and my chest is facing away from the camera. If I decide to not pivot on the knee and come up, now I'm going to be facing a completely different direction, but either is fine in the get-up, right? So now I'm coming up to here. Now you can see I'm engaged in the glute. So this is a great angle to come up out of that lunge to the standing position. The sole of this foot and the ball of that foot are going to drive down into the ground so I can get to that standing position, and then I control back down. And this is where I'm going to leave or end off on this video, and then because now once we've reached the standing position, now we've completed half of the Turkish get-up, and then going from the ground back, from standing back to the ground is the reverse direction, and that's called the reverse get-up. So that is sometimes called that, if you have heard that expression. So again, reiterating the point of how important it is to drive whatever parts of your body are in contact with the ground, whether it's a palm, an elbow, a foot, a heel, or even just the ball of the foot, whatever is in contact with the ground, the more that you use the ground, push down into it, push against the ground, that's going to create more muscle activation throughout all the structures of the body to give you that stimulus and the energy that you need to get up in the get-up. Or in any other exercise where you're grounding. Coming out of a squat would be the same thing. Use the ground, but especially in get-ups, they're a fantastic exercise for people of any age, especially older clients and people that are, 60s, 70s, and 80s. A very big concern as people move towards their latter 70s, 80s, and beyond is if they fall, they have trouble getting up. So you may never even need to load the get-up. Just doing the get-up body weight without any added weight is still a fantastic exercise to practice to get from the ground to standing whenever necessary. So that's a great, if you're a trainer, be sure to incorporate movements from the ground to standing or even to kneeling with your older client base, because it's very, very important that people are comfortable on the ground and know how to get up from there. In any event, so that is the latter portion of the get-up, going from the hand up to the standing position, and I will develop more as I continue in the Turkish Get-Up series.